Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of Peanuts. Today we're talking about a moment that perfectly blends humor and tenderness, taken from one of the early Peanut strips published on January 5th, 1951. The main characters? Charlie Brown and Patty. It all begins with Charlie, who, as he often does, starts off with one of his classic complaints. He seems like the same old downhearted Charlie, full of insecurities, always a little out of place. But watch out, because this time, something different happens. Patty, who at first seems to be ignoring him, suddenly bursts out with a surprising reaction. She defends him, not with kind words or a warm hug, but with a good solid smack to the one making fun of him. A funny, impulsive gesture, but full of affection. And this is where Schulz's magic comes into play. In just a few vignettes, he manages to make us laugh, think, and even feel a little moved. He uses nonsense and childlike psychology to tell us something deeper: how children experience emotions, loyalty, and the need to feel accepted. This strip is a small masterpiece of rhythm and irony. There's a powerful contrast between words and actions. Charlie says he's unlucky, and yet he discovers someone is ready to defend him with almost over-the-top passion. Patty is affectionate, but in her own way. A noisy, physical, almost comical way. Even back in 1951, Schulz was already laying the groundwork for a rich narrative world. Behind every joke and every expression hides a little fragment of truth about childhood. Loyalty, self-esteem, unpredictable reactions, these are all ingredients that make this scene a perfect example of Peanut's unique style. A tender and absurd reflection, just the kind Schulz excelled at. And yes, there may be a smack involved, but it's a smack full of affection. In the first vignette, we are presented with a simple yet deeply meaningful scene. Charlie Brown and Patty are sitting on the ground, side by side. The background is bare, reduced to the essentials, a stylistic choice typical of Charles Schulz's early strips. The absence of unnecessary detail shifts the focus entirely to the characters, their expressions, and most importantly, to what is said or left unsaid. Charlie Brown, with a distant look in his eyes, bitterly utters a cutting line: "I'm a useless sort of person." It's a direct, raw confession that strikes with its authenticity. This moment of vulnerability is characteristic of his persona. From the very beginnings of Peanuts, Charlie Brown stood out for his melancholy, his awareness of his own inadequacy, and his marked self-criticism. Unlike the comic book heroes of the time, always victorious and carefree, Charlie Brown represented the opposite. He was the child who failed, who felt left out. And it is precisely this fragility that made him universal. Generations of readers saw their own fears, disappointments, and insecurities reflected in him. He was, deep down, a little melancholic adult, a revolutionary trait for that era. Patty, although she remains silent, plays an essential role. She doesn't reply, but she listens. She is the silent witness to a moment of weakness, as if to suggest that some truths, however painful, simply need to be received. The power of the scene lies in its simplicity: a few strokes of ink, two children, one sentence, and a silence that speaks louder than 1,000 words. As is often the case in Peanuts, Schulz portrays childhood not as a carefree time, but as a complex period, full of doubts and profound questions. And he does so with an economy of means that amplifies the strength of the message. In the second vignette, Charlie Brown continues his aloud inner monologue, doubling down on his self-accusations and bluntly calling himself a good-for-nothing. Unlike the first vignette, we now see him standing, as if his posture itself were meant to emphasize the seriousness of what he's saying. He is turned toward Patty, who watches him with a gaze that is beginning to shift. Initially neutral, her expression gradually takes on a growing tension. Something is about to erupt, a reaction building just beneath the surface. Schulz's lexical choice here is especially meaningful. It's a harsh, unforgiving expression. This isn't simply a matter of saying one isn't good at something. This is total condemnation, a brutally severe self-definition, harsher even than calling oneself useless. This kind of language reflects an extreme self-criticism, almost a form of verbal self-punishment that strikes the reader with its rawness, especially considering the character's young age. As is often the case in the world of Peanuts, Charlie Brown speaks with the depth and disillusionment of an adult in existential crisis. And it is precisely in this contrast that Schulz's narrative genius reveals itself. The scene moves along the edge between childhood and adulthood, blending seemingly irreconcilable registers. The pain expressed by Charlie Brown is real and deep, yet it's filtered through the codes and rhythms of a child's world. It's in this interplay that Peanuts finds its strength. It's the irrationality of childhood, with its sideways, surprising logic, that becomes the key to flipping the situation. Where an adult might remain trapped in despair, a child, or more accurately, a Peanuts character, can react in a completely unpredictable way, and for that very reason, a genuinely authentic one. In the third vignette, the twist happens literally. Patty, with a determined expression and an unexpectedly resolute attitude, leaps to Charlie Brown's defense in a completely surprising way, with a sharp, direct punch. It's not just an impulsive move, but an intense and unmistakable display of loyalty. Patty refuses to let anyone speak badly of Charlie Brown, not even Charlie Brown himself. It's a moment that completely breaks the rhythm of the previous vignettes and catches the reader off guard precisely because of its unpredictability. The comic strength of this scene lies entirely in the absurdity of the reaction, in the contrast between the seemingly calm dialogue and the sudden outburst of physical energy. In Peanuts, the children aren't driven by adult logic or rationality. What moves them is a kind of instinctive, visceral loyalty that sometimes reveals itself in surprising ways. Schulz, with his usual mastery, manages to portray a sincere emotional impulse without weighing down the scene, preserving that surreal lightness that defines the entire Peanuts universe. Patty's aggressive gesture, graphically emphasized with stars, motion lines, and symbols indicating the blow, is immediately softened in the following vignette by Charlie Brown's reaction, a look of disbelief, confusion, almost tender in its bewilderment. It's as if he can't believe that someone would want to defend him so fiercely, especially from himself. In that moment, the comic strip becomes something deeper, a humorous yet touching reflection on the value of self-esteem, on friendship, and on the human need to feel accepted. Patty doesn't just step in, she does so with conviction, without hesitation, showing that even an apparently violent act can carry emotional meaning. It's a gesture of protection that goes beyond words and reaches straight to the reader's heart. In Peanuts, even a punch can be a declaration of unconditional love, a rough, yet genuine way of saying, "You matter," even when you don't believe it yourself. In the fourth vignette, Charlie Brown is sitting on the ground, stunned by the blow he just received. His expression is that of someone who has just endured a cosmic injustice, and yet there is no anger in his eyes, only surprise. Still, his comment is disarming in its simplicity and innocence. Such loyalty. A short phrase, almost whispered, but it carries an entire world of meaning. There's all the sweetness of the strip wrapped up in that final line. Despite the hit, Charlie Brown sees Patty's action as a sign of love and respect, as if the physical act, however painful, were actually the tangible expression of a deep bond. It's precisely this unique ability of Charles Schulz to overturn emotional expectations that makes every Peanuts strip so special and memorable. We begin in a moment of sadness, almost grotesque, pass through the comedy of the absurd, which often arises from a wildly disproportionate reaction to a situation, and arrive at a tender, human, even poetic conclusion. It's never just a laugh for its own sake, but a small emotional jolt, a smile that leaves a mark. The comic effect is further amplified by the seriousness with which the children approach these moments. They seem like little adults, caught up in matters of principle, honor, and friendship, with a kind of solemnity that borders on the epic. There's no overt irony, no wink to the reader, and yet the irony is all there, implicit, powerful, hidden in the paradoxical dynamics of their behavior, and in the words Schulz chooses with surgical precision. It's a humor born from empathy and absurdity, and it makes us laugh precisely because we recognize ourselves in those feelings, even when they're dressed as children. This strip, published just a few months after the debut of Peanuts, already showcases Schulz's narrative maturity. The theme of self-criticism, the defense of friendship, and the irrationality of affectionate gestures is handled with great skill. It also presents a version of Patty who is much more central than she would be in later years. In the early days, in fact, Patty played a very important role, often appearing alongside Charlie Brown. Only with the arrival of characters like Lucy and Linus would she gradually be pushed into the background. An interesting curiosity is that in the early strips, Schulz often used physical gags, like kicks or punches, which he would later abandon in favor of a more psychological and verbal kind of humor. This moment thus represents a small fragment of an experimental phase in the comic's development, a time when the author was still searching for his balance between slapstick humor and emotional depth. This tension between lightness and gravity is one of the most distinctive hallmarks of the Peanuts universe, and this January 5th, 1951 strip is a perfect example of how these two elements can coexist in just 4 simple vignettes.
If you enjoyed yourselves, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next, friends.